Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Adult Learner's Journey, our UALI podcast, to learn with and from adult learners and folks at institutions who are working to create more equitable and accessible spaces for our adult learners on campus. My name is McClellan, and I'm very excited to be joined today by two folks from Portland who are working together in partnership at Portland State University and the Self Enhancement Institute to create spaces that are more inclusive for our adult learners on campus. So I would love to turn it over to both of you, Randi and Cherie, to introduce yourselves and tell our listeners a little bit more about you and the work that you're doing in Portland.
Yeah, so I'm Randi Harris. My pronouns are she, her. I serve as the director of the Transfer and Returning Student Resource Center at Portland State University.
And I am Cherie Davis, the Human Resource Director at Self Enhancement, Inc., which is a nonprofit organization that works with a culturally specific agency of African American. And so we work with kids and with families.
Thank you. I apologize. I know I said institute, but Self Enhancement.
That's okay.
Just want to make sure we say it over and over. But would love if you wouldn't mind, whoever would like to answer this, but to talk a little bit more about the adult learner landscape in Portland and maybe the types of students that are attracted to coming to Portland State University. So would love to hear just a little more about the landscape in Portland.
Sure. So I think one of the things that is interesting about Portland State University is the average age of our undergraduate student is 26 years old, right? So that adult learners are sort of the heart of Portland State University. And I would say that about 35% of our undergraduate students to identify as at 25 plus. And we also have a significant number of students in Oregon, or people in Oregon, adults in Oregon, who have some college but no degree. And so one of the things that we've been doing is trying to reach out to students to help them find pathways to finish their bachelor's degree. And I think it's really significant, particularly for urban institutions, because many of our adult learners are place-bound, right? They might be working, they have families. And so I think we're able to serve a large number of students and adult learners due to just sort of our location in an urban environment, as well as by offering flexible degree programs where we do some of our courses online, right? So that students can continue to be employed while they're working towards finishing their degree, which is what really inspired our partnership with Self Enhancement Incorporated. So they've been a partner of Portland State for a long time in different ways and helping to support particularly the youth and through different programs and then coming to Portland State. But we wanted to partner with SEI in looking at some of their staff who are adult learners who may have not finished their bachelor's degrees. How could we support them to come back to school, come to PSU and finish their bachelor's degree?
Excellent, thank you. And I'm wondering, Cherie, I know, yeah, you might have something to add to that too, but for our listeners, most of the people who will be listening to this or are listening right now are employed at institutions, so are probably pretty familiar, at least with like the mission of a public state institution like Portland State. But I'm wondering if you could also kind of provide some clarity about the types of work your organization does in general, and then also maybe kind of fill in some of those gaps to Randi's comments.
Yeah, of course. Self-enhancement, though it's culturally specific, we also, we work with students and their families. So any student that wants to be involved with the agency, of course, we allow it. We work from second grade to post-high, which goes to 25 years old for us. But we understand that any student that may have some challenges usually doesn't just have a challenge at school, they have a challenge at home, be it, financial, be it, one home, one parent families, whatever those scenarios are. And so we always try to work from a holistic point of view. in doing that, we also have a lot of students that may have graduated from high school, did not finish college, but are in our post-high program. But we also have workers who maybe came up through the program that are now adults doing good work, but did not finish their degree. We prefer a degree for the work we do, but we also have those that do not have their degree. And so our goal in this is working with our post-high students to help them finish their education, or any staff member that wants to finish their education. So we have another young lady, I would be remiss not to mention Jennifer Ellis, who works in partnership with me and really works closely with post-high students and our staff to encourage them to go back to school. So we work together to like identify anybody within our that has not finished their degree, that has a desire to, and try to help push them to Portland State and Randy's them program, which has been great because it's familiar. The relationship is good. And so we're able to talk from a relational level and not just you're just this counselor or admin person, but it's become a really good relationship so that if students or staff are struggling, they feel like they can have a conversation about where they are right now in order to see what they need to do to help them continue their education. So it's been a great relationship. Of course, we would like more. And so we're constantly working to see what we can do to, get people to return to school and finish their education.
Cherie, you said something that I think is really important in the work that we're doing in the project too, is that at Portland State, we want to definitely support our adult learners and students to finish their degrees at Portland State. And I think what's important, particularly with the partnership with SEI, in talking about being culturally specific, is we have through our multicultural retention services, and our executive director, Perla Pinedo, is also really important in this project, is not creating something necessarily brand new, because they offer culturally specific, holistic advising and support and programs. But how can we modify some of those programs to better serve adult learners? So we're enhancing and expanding a program that exists and modifying it that way. And I think it's important because it's, like you said, Cherie, this is familiar. It's something where we have relationships within the communities of SEI and at Portland State and in Portland in general. People know each other. So even our admissions office that we partner with too throughout this process, people know each other, and that's really helpful. And so in many ways, like some of the programming that we've done through our partnership, like we will bring our different offices to SEI to meet with the students. And I think that's been really important. But that was also an aha moment for me. I was like, oh yeah, like so many people are familiar or know each other or know someone who knows each other, and you can build rapport and community faster so that we can support adult learners in getting connected more quickly.
Yeah, and there's so many things I'm thinking about too while you're talking, but one thing that's really coming to mind is the cultural piece of this. I think there are so many conversations across the country now and talking about this like enrollment gap. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And that really puts this on like an economic lens of like, we need adult learners because we need them to fill in our tuition gaps. But I appreciate that you're talking about it from the cultural lens too. And it sounds like with SEI, there are some really deep-rooted connections that are happening and some trust that's being built to support the adult learners and make sure that they're going to institutions that are going to support them as people, not just as a way to fill gaps. So I really, really appreciate that. Some things I'm thinking about now too are for folks who are listening and thinking about, do organizations like SEI exist in my city? How do you go about building relationships or identifying organizations that we can work with that might have these deeper type of connections to our cities? So I'm wondering if you could talk about that. Maybe you might, I mean, you probably can both talk about it from your own perspectives, but how your connection was made and how it's really been built over the past several years, it sounds like, to create something that it sounds like is working.
I'll go. I think, it's very organic, basically from the fact that we have students that we're trying to get into college. We're trying to show them what their next steps in life can be and give them options. We always talk about life has options. And so we can't say that for our students if we can't say that for ourselves. And so this process, I think you really look for institutions like Portland State that do have that urban feel that can touch students in a way that financially maybe they can still live at home, that there are different avenues that you look for that allow it to be an option for them to see the end of the goal and to see what the steps are that make it possible. And I think Portland State allows that. And so it's really looking at your vision, what's the goal of the institution and the goal of the partner that you're working with. How do you find the right partner? And I think it's those things that help you be successful. Now it's slow, and you have to be willing to take baby steps, and then also really look at the little things. And I think this is what Portland State has done well, and they've tried to help us with, is look at what are some of the little things that happen that become barriers. And so we're always, as an agency, looking at what the barriers are and how do we remove them. Well, they've been willing to work with us on little things that may seem small to are insignificant to people, but that really can be barriers to completing an education. One simple thing could be if I'm a staff member and I already have insurance, but you're charging me for insurance in Portland State. That could be $1,500, $2,000, $3,000 that could send me over the edge and not be able to do school. So little things that help remove barriers that allow kids as well as families to finish their education. They're small, but they're huge. So partnerships, like-mindedness.
I appreciate what you're saying, Cherie, because it also makes me think about, I appreciate when you said that it takes time and commitment. And I would say that there's a deep commitment, particularly our Vice President, Dr. Ame Lambert, for global diversity and inclusion in building relationships with community organizations. So Portland State, I mean, our motto is let knowledge serve the city. And so we see the city as our campus, right? And so the communities and community organizations around Portland are Portland State. And so fostering those relationships and listening to what's needed or what people are interested in, because that's how this started, right? Which was when the call went out for this grant opportunity. We had something that was like, I think this fits. We've been in this conversation about wanting to do something for the staff at SEI. Is this an opportunity? And so it's allowed us to explore that. And it's based off relationships that our leaders have been committed to. And then other folks, like I mentioned, when I got to go to SEI, it was like, oh, like people have been in conversation for a long time and have the relationships. And so it's, I think, seeking out the right opportunity at the right time. And so to answer your initial question, like, are there organizations? I think there are. And I think folks know. And sometimes it's like, where do you have an existing relationship? Where's there potential to maybe enhance what you have? And then working collectively to determine what that like opportunity is that you'll work on together.
Excellent. Yep. Yeah, that's very helpful to I mean, I think the word I've been hearing over and over is relationships, and two, that these take time to but that there are likely opportunities in any of the cities USU work or coalition works with, or just across the US. So I appreciate you kind of giving us a little bit of insight into how this relationship started. Something I am interested in is talking a little more about what this looks like practically. So between both of the organizations, the university and SEI, I'm wondering, what are the responsibilities of each of your organizations? How does that handoff look like from, perspective or soon to be enrolled or currently enrolled adult learners to PSU? What does that bridge between both of you look like? What types of things are happening that make this successful?
So I guess I'll start, Randy, and then you can chime in. On our end, we put a call out to staff and to our post-high group that has students that may have an interest in returning. We put a call out to staff, like, where are you in your education? Is there a need? How can we help you fulfill that need? And then we set up some time after usually our staff meeting, our call out, and ask people to come in, and then we have some conversation, and then we partner with Randi and Perla to set up some times with their admission. Hey, we got this many people that we think may have some interest. Let's, put some time together and have some conversation and see if there's some possibilities here. And so they've been so flexible with us in just taking the time to come out and just, it may only be 2 or 3 people, but in that 2 or 3 people, the relationships that they've built with those 2 or 3 people have encouraged others, and how that response has been, how the interaction was, the communication. And then I'll let Randi speak to their part of the admissions, but that's how we began that portion of it.
Yeah, and it's so important because I think you were talking about Jennifer earlier, who is such a key part of this project because she has relationships with all the people. She
Everybody.
knows like who to nudge. Like, you might think about this. I remember that time 2 years ago when you mentioned you want to do this. How about now, right? And so she can do that sort of like warm introduction. And when there's students who had enrolled or were a part of the program and then didn't enroll for a term or two, we could reach out to Jennifer and she could like connect with them because they have a deeper relationship with her. And so that was really important. Or she would be like, oh, there's this person who used to go to PSU. Can they get in on this program? It's like, yes, absolutely. Like, so that having someone who's familiar and knows people and cares deeply about them at SEI has been really important. We partnered with our admissions office, and they have a team who's dedicated to multicultural admissions and admission programs, and again, culturally specific. So it was really helpful to engage with them, and they're just wonderful. And so that we could do some events for quick admission so students could get an answer on the spot. And then we brought out one of our financial aid counselors so they could get financial aid counseling at SEI and talk about what that could look like. And that was helpful. Because that's the financial component is huge. It is one of the biggest decision points for all students, but particularly adult learners. And so making sure we had that available. And then when students engage with the program, we have one of our advisors in multicultural retention services who's dedicated to these students and who reaches out to them with opportunities. So that includes like credit for prior learning. Portland State is working on enhancing our opportunities for credit for prior learning. And so as new opportunities were developed, we could then have the advisor reach out to the students. And we had one of our advisors actually look through their degree audits to see, would this writing class work for them? Like, should we even reach out to offer it? And it was like, yes, it could work for these 4 students. So we could be like, hey, you need this, and you could do this credit for prior learning, and this is how to do it. And so I think it is that holistic support and doing some of the back end work so that like the students, they're so motivated and dedicated and they have full lives. So anything we can do, like you were saying, Cherie, to remove a barrier that isn't necessary on their behalf can really expedite, I think, their degree progress.
Thanks. And now, I want to shift to talk too about what the outcomes of this have been. I know for the past couple of years now, this relationship has existed. Would love for you to talk about what some of the things you've noticed, or maybe even things that you have real data on, to talk about what the experience has been like and how that shifted for adult learners on your campus. Additionally, I would like to hear if there are any like learning moments you've had from this, if if you were able to continue the work or if you could go back and tell yourself something a couple of years ago, what are some of those things that you've learned in working with the students or with each other that would have been helpful to know?
I think that, so the start of this program too, we were coming out of being fully remote for a long time. So students, we have more like on-campus opportunities, in-person opportunities, and that's growing exponentially at Portland State, back to sort of everywhere. And we're figuring out that balance for sure. And so the reason I mentioned that was engagement with the adult learners and having them meet with our advisors or other opportunities. It was harder at first. We were doing a lot of it remotely. Or even when we would come to SEI, they have their staff are working at multiple sites, right? So depending on where they were, this is like the flexibility. We had a staff who wanted to come to our, we did an orientation at SEI, but couldn't make it, but got on the phone with Cherie. Cherie walked down with her phone. I talked to them on the phone, like we made it happen. So you have to do that. But I think in terms of what we learned is that finances drive a lot of this. Many of our adult learners have earned a lot of credits at multiple institutions over time. And so their Pell eligibility or financial aid eligibility is reduced. And students are more hesitant to take out loans. And I would say that's also something to be like culturally aware of too, is taking out loans is not culturally appropriate in many places. And I think we have to be thoughtful about that when we're trying to tell people to do this or not do it, and ways in which they can finance their education. So I think, Cherie, please correct me if I'm wrong. We've talked about this, like how could we do joint like philanthropic ask, right, to help support folks from SEI to be able to return and fund their degrees. And then can we also like do that as an incentive for students to participate in some of the engagement opportunities, right? Because we've had some success in other programs around that, which was a learning that we had. Yeah, I don't know if you have anything else to add on that, Cherie.
Not really. I just think it's just the creativity that it takes often to help people think through the finances and family and their life, and the patience that it takes, because it is huge when we're thinking about their finances and how to make it happen. And not that they're not driven, and not that they don't have the desire. It's how to really make it happen. And so it's that process that I love the patience that we've been able to do, not always to the outcome that we want, but I think it helps us think through the understanding of what we need to do, and even the bureaucracy in it, of how we have those conversations. Philanthropically, I agree. I'm like, that's my goal. Like, how do I find somebody with some money to help these babies go to school? And so that's always the conversation, because I know it was a struggle for me. And so how to do that is always a challenge.
Thank you.
I didn't really answer your question, but that's really what.
That's okay. You said very powerful things, and as we're closing out today, I want to give you all the last word too. I don't have a question for you, but I want to turn it over to both of you, just based on this conversation. For the folks who are listening to this podcast, final words for them, as you, whether it's advice, whether it's questions to consider, no matter what it is, we just want to know what's on your mind.
For me, I think regardless of that, the data or the big outcomes, I think I just want to say the heart for Portland State to want to try, to want to do the work that they're doing, and to try and go the extra mile is what anybody, regardless of culture or any of that, that's what they want to see. And I think the empathy and the ability to reach out and want to be that partner is half the battle. And so for me, I think I just appreciate that's a win, right? And I think the more we work together, that we'll be able to break down continual barriers to help people return to school and get their education. So I'm appreciative.
I feel like Cherie should get the last word.
Well, then that's it. I appreciate both of you. As we close out today, I just want to say thank you to both of you for the work that you're doing and continue to do for students in Portland. But I think that's going to have reverberating effects now that this is really being shared with the world now. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you all for listening today. This has been the Adult Learner's Journey, a UALI podcast. My name's Jimmy McClellan.